Hey guys, what's going on? Lane back for another Netflix review. I hope you all had a Merry Christmas, and today I'm going to be taking a look at Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up is an American satirical comedy that tells the story of two astronomers, PhD student Kate DiBiase and Professor Randall Minnie, who both discover a previously unknown comet and attempt to celebrate the occasion before quickly realizing that the comet is on a direct path toward Earth and is large enough to kill all life on Earth. The pair proceed to warn as many people as possible of the incoming comet to try and prevent it from causing an apocalyptic event, but their pleas largely fall on deaf ears as everyone seems to be more concerned with media and consumerism, which causes difficulties in their attempts to save the planet. This is another movie that seems to be split in terms of reception, with general audiences praising it while professional critics aren't quite as sold with it. And as with the movie The Unforgivable, which I watched last month, I once again found myself split in the middle with this one. It does do a good job at addressing important issues that are ongoing in society, but I felt like it could have gone further than it did. Part of that is because there's so much focus that's placed on all the big name actors that are spread all over the place, which I feel distracts from the effectiveness of its messages. Leonardo Dicaprio did a great job playing Mindy. His character has a family life, he suffers from anxiety attacks, and he becomes increasingly more insane trying to convince everyone about the impending comet about to hit Earth. His performance was human and believable amidst all of the silliness that occurs around him. There is a point in the story where his character shifts gears and becomes a hypocrite of sorts, which I felt didn't suit him. It seemed to be thrown in just to manufacture conflict, and it's dropped about 20 minutes later, so the movie never fully commits to that angle. Aside from that though, his character stayed relatively consistent. Jennifer Lawrence was also great as Kate, if not quite as fleshed out compared to Mindy. She loses her cool with all of the idiots she has to deal with, which makes her a great counterpart to the more reserved Mindy, as she does not shy away from insulting people directly in their faces. The two complemented each other well for the most part. The interactions between her and Mindy flip back and forth from friendly to antagonistic, which tended to be spastic at times. The conflict between student and master does make for interesting watch material, though it's not executed to its full potential. There's a variety of other characters featured in the movie as well, way too many to go in detail with in this review, but I'll go over a few of them quickly. Rob Morgan was decent as Teddy Oglethorpe, but nothing spectacular. He was more or less just there to help the story progress. Meryl Streep was over the top as President Orlean, and not exactly in a good way. It is funny to see her hamming up in what's obviously a nod to Donald Trump's personality, but at times it can be excessive and ridiculous, especially when the humor doesn't always land as well as it should. Jonah Hill as her son Jason, I still don't know how I feel about him. On one hand, he has some of the funniest lines in the whole movie, though part of that is because I feel Jonah has great delivery, and on the other hand, some of his lines were so cringeworthy I'd get a headache. There's also a weird sexual angle that's casually thrown in between him and his mom that just felt wrong and out of place. There's so many big name actors in this movie that I feel it works against its favor. Actors like Timothée Chalamet, Cate Blanchett, and Ron Perlman are all squeezed in, and they all manage to be competent in their roles, but their characters are all one note in personality. Some of them seem completely identical to others. And some feel like they're there just to help market the movie, like with Ariana Grande, who I felt was a strange casting choice. She's definitely a great singer and is featured in one of the movie's more memorable moments in the form of a concert with an original song, but beyond this, her character doesn't really have anything to do with the story at hand. The only character I felt was truly memorable apart from the leads was Mark Rylance's role as the corporate drone Peter Isherwell. He completely sells it as a guy whose head is in the clouds and doesn't have humanity's best interest at heart, not to mention his bumbling personality being a constant source of comedy for me. Apart from the characters, the main focus of the movie concerns the looming threat of the killer comet and society's general apathy toward it. The movie definitely has its heart in the right place when it comes to addressing its themes, but doesn't approach them with any sort of tact or plan in mind. The movie tackles topics of media, government, capitalism, and climate change with the subtlety of a jackhammer. The in-your-face nature of its presentation is appealing in simpler areas like ridiculing sanitized daytime TV hosts, but in more complex ones such as the ineffectiveness of the federal government in response to crises, it is almost cartoonish in its lampooning. This wouldn't bother me so much if there wasn't an end-of-the-world scenario attached to it. Tying together comedic situations to something as serious as an apocalypse isn't unheard of, but the tonal clashes in the story were inconsistent, and made it frustrating to watch at times. And it's not like it doesn't get anything right with its themes. There's a scene in which Ishmael wants to mine the comet as opposed to blowing it up, which made for an interesting concept to think about regarding corporate greed. It genuinely made me stop and think, what if this actually happened? And truthfully, it doesn't sound that far out of the realm of possibility. But most of the time, the themes are only examined at surface level, and much of it gets buried in the absurdity of the movie's events. The climate change bit was particularly lacking, as it's mostly just brief snippets of animals intercut with people doing bad things to the environment. It was really on the nose, not to mention completely unrelated to an external threat like a comet. Something I did like about the story, though, is how shots of people around the world are shown watching events unfold from America's perspective. It gives a more authentic look into how people would respond to a potential extinction event, as opposed to everything just being completely America-centric. And I'd be lying if I said that I didn't enjoy some of the comedy that was featured in it. A lot of the laughs for me came in the form of running gags, like when Kate and Mindy are forced to pay for snacks in the White House that are supposed to be for free, or when Kate keeps begging for one of Mindy's Xanax pills and how that adds further to his anxiety. It's the little things that make it worthwhile, which makes it all the more disappointing when so much emphasis is placed on grossly exaggerated caricatures, as well as reaching for a lot of low-hanging fruit when it comes to poking fun at radical conservatives and media-obsessed masses. I think the average person would agree that things like climate change, social media addiction, and political apathy are problems that need to be addressed, and it's admirable that the movie highlights these topics, but creatively speaking, it just doesn't do enough with them. One thing that actually took me by surprise was how bad the editing was for this movie. There are many times during dialogue scenes where the camera will jump cut ahead a few seconds in the same scene while characters keep talking, and it was really disorienting and distracting to what I was trying to pay attention to. There was one instance where I swear I thought I had a problem with my internet connection. A character was in the middle of talking, stopped, and all of a sudden the camera freeze-framed the character for a few seconds while others around him kept talking. This may be a consequence of streaming on Netflix, but even so, I thought it was a very poor stylistic choice. Editing aside though, I think the movie looks good from a visual point of view. There was a lot of effort put into the production design, especially at the political rallies, and the special effects used to highlight the comet as it comes closer to Earth added tension that compounded further over the course of the story, which helped me become more invested in the lead character's quest to try and stop it. Overall, Don't Look Up is definitely a polarizing experience, and one that I still find myself questioning where I ultimately lean towards in terms of opinion. I think if you like politically and socially motivated satires and don't mind its shallow observations mixed with a touch of self-indulgence, this one could be right up your alley, provided that you go into it not expecting anything in the way of subtlety. I don't like to end a review of a movie like this on a middle ground because it does have great messages and motivations behind it, but it feels too heavy-handed in its approach for me to fully take it seriously. I wouldn't necessarily look down on it, but it's not something I feel is worth looking up to either. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Don't Look Up. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Brazilian rom-com, Luli. Bye bye!